Hold on. Get on this thing.
Okay, so good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Today's date is May 22nd and the time is 6:00 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask those present turn off your cell phones or set to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet upon the front table. I would like to take a moment to review the procedures that the commission will follow tonight. First, the commission will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please first state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the commission. The commission shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the commission. The commission will then formulate and vote on a motion. The motion will typically either grant or deny the requested application. Any commission member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda item. That being said, roll call. Let roll call reflect that all 5 supervisors or commissioners are here. Third item on the agenda is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Seeing no one jump up. We have anybody on the phone?
As of right now.
Okay, we're going to move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is number 4, approval of the minutes of April 24th, 2023. If we have no additions or corrections that we need to make on the agenda, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same side. Next item on the agenda is item number 5 is a public hearing for the Homestead 1867 edition second filing minor subdivision proposal on parcel number 884405200009. Dan, do you want to read the information into the record, please?
Yes, John Weaver and Brian Weaver have filed for a 2-lot minor subdivision to be known as Homestead 1867 edition second filing on the property parcel that was just identified. This agricultural subdivision proposal has been properly noticed in Sioux City Journal's legal section on May 12, 2023. The neighbors within 1,000 feet have been duly notified via May 5, 2023 letter about tonight's meeting of the Zoning Commission. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been notified and have been requested to comment. The Woodbury County engineer found the proposal in compliance with closure requirements and found that the lots have adequate access. The engineer recommends that the owners prepare a clearly written easement agreement to cover issues such as snow removal and maintenance of shared access driveway and record the easement for the benefit of future owners. The property is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District and is not located in the Special Flood Hazard Area. Extraterritorial review is not required as the property exceeds 2 miles from an incorporated area. Based upon the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinance, the proposal meets appropriate criteria for approval. Staff does recommend approval with the condition that the owners prepare the clearly written easement agreement to cover the issues such as snow removal and maintenance of the shared driveway and record the easement for the benefit of the future owners. I have been in touch with their attorney, Mr. Pat Phipps, and he will be working on addressing that matter. So that's all I have.
Okay, do we have anyone here that wants to speak to this application? Do we have any of the Weavers here?
No.
Okay, Alan, do you have anything you want to add, or?
I'm Alan Fagan. I live in Sioux City. I'm the surveyor for this property. We did a survey for John and Brian in 2020. Two of those lots encroached into this 40. That's what required the subdivision. This is strictly for ag purposes. It's 56 acres, but they're dividing other ground, even though these aren't equitable lots. That's what they're doing, is dividing this amongst themselves. I talked to Pat Phipps last Friday about the easement and what Mark Nara is requesting, and he's agreeable to do that, so he's working on that at this time. That's all I have to add.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the commissioner or anyone else in the audience who wants to speak to this? Okay, commissioners, anything? No? Are you ready to entertain a motion? I'm ready to entertain a motion. If anybody is ready. Yes, we do. Thank you for reminding me. How about a motion to close session?
I'll make a motion to close session.
Okay, we have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor to close session?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in closed session. Any further discussion?
I'll make a
entertain
motion.
the motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve approval of the homestead 1867 edition, second filing to the Board of Supervisors with the condition that the owners prepare a clearly written easement agreement to cover issues such as snow removal and maintenance of the shared access driveway and record the easement for the benefit of the future owners.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Dan will be in touch. Okay, we have the next item on the agenda. Public hearing of a solar energy systems amendment proposal to Woodbury County zoning ordinance. Summary of a proposed zoning ordinance text amendments. Dan, do you want to read that information into the record, please?
Yes, for this public hearing, this is an ordinance amending the text of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance to amend portions of the table of contents, section 3.03.4, entitled the land use summary table allowed uses in each zoning district, portions of section 6.02 entitled definitions, and the renumbering of definitions and page numbers. The proposal is to add solar energy systems private use as accessory uses in each zoning district, and to add solar energy systems utility scale as a conditional use in the agricultural preservation zoning district and the general industrial zoning district. And as this was brought up last month as an information item, we had discussed that our line item in the land use summary table under utilities has a slot for electrical energy generation, not including wind. Our past endeavors of going through permitting of utility scale solar systems followed that line item under general industrial with the C within that respective corner. Following our meeting last month, I had another meeting with the county attorney's office, Joshua Widman, and he talked about the need to, if we're to look at just simply considering putting a C over in the other column for electrical energy generation, not including wind, he said that it would probably be better to create the category there for solar energy systems for utility scale, and basically consider the C, of course, in that AP column, but also retain it down in the general industrial column. And what that does is it allows us to put definitions in and actually define what those respective items are. So kind of in the proposed amendment section, it goes in there to offer for consideration a definition for the two activities that we're looking at here tonight, which is the private use on an individual's parcel only. So that definition would read, solar energy systems for private use with the placement of the letter A within the AP, AE, NR, SR, GC, HC, LI, and general industrial zoning district columns. What this would do is kind of reflect how the city of Sioux City looks at solar panels for an individual accessory for a basic residential property that would make it more of an administrative building permit style use in that factor. We go on to also identify for a definition to add a solar array definition in the back is possibly definition 158, defining a solar array as equipment used for private or utility scale solar systems, can be mounted on primary or accessory structures, on a racking system affixed to the ground, or integrated as a mechanical or structural component of a structure. And then the definition of solar energy systems private would go on for a system that converts solar energy to usable thermal, mechanical, chemical, electrical energy for immediate on-site use that has an existing principal use on the property. And that's very key there. You would have to have a house or a principal activity on the property in order to have a residential accessory solar panel. Solar energy systems private shall be allowed only as accessory use to the principal private use. Systems can be mounted on primary or accessory structures on a racking system affixed to the ground or integrated as mechanical or structural component of a structure. The other part of this concept, of course, is twofold, going to the concept of a utility type of situation. And I know the Zoning Commission and the Board of Adjustment has past history on permitting one of these, in particular the Mid-American site down there by Port Neal Road. This would be within that same concept of the C within the general industrial zoning district. But what this proposal does is it does put that out there. Do we consider possibly, yes or no, putting a conditional use opportunity on AP land or not? That's really kind of the glaring difference between this proposal and what's currently in the zoning ordinance of not having the C or having the C use opportunity there. So I'll go ahead and read off this definition. Solar energy systems utility scale with the placement of the letter C within the AP district and the GI zoning district columns on the table related to this line item use, and with the placement of the two hyphens which represent prohibited in the AE, NR, SR, GC, HC, and LI zoning district columns on the table related to this line item use. We also add definition for solar energy systems utility scale in the back, which is energy system commonly referred to as a solar farm, which converts solar energy to usable thermal, mechanical, chemical, or electrical energy for transmission through the electrical grid for off-site use or wholesale and or retail sale. Systems can be mounted on primary or accessory structures on a racking system affixed to the ground or integrated as mechanical or structural component of a structure. Utility scale systems do not include concentrating solar power systems. And then, of course, there's another definition there. The solar array, again, energy systems as definition 59, utility scale definition. Okay, I guess the last few definitions are sort of a cleanup or a renumbering things. When we make amendments to the ordinance and stick things in the middle, we end up kind of pushing some definitions around. So that's kind of what the third kind of amendment is. So basically, to summarize everything I said, kind of the biggest distinguishing factor is this is about whether or not, in terms of utility scale, we have a conditional use opportunity in AP or not. That's the big distinguishing factor. Then the other one is going back to simple residential based use on an individual parcel would be the adding the accessory use as a possible option. So that's all I've got.
Okay, do we have anybody in the audience that has any comments or questions on this matter on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tom Trahern. I am a project developer for NextEra Energy, and we're in the area. And we've been approached by landowners, and we've approached landowners about doing a solar project. I've spoke to Dan on the issue of doing a utility scale. Currently, the provision in the code as written would only allow it in an industrial district. In doing so, we feel like if a project were to move forward, it'd be taking up a lot of ground in an industrial area that's probably been marketed for, developed for, and has utilities and such for something other than a solar farm, which would not bring in, have the vehicles, employees necessary to occupy that ground. And so we feel adding this as a conditional use into an agriculture district kind of takes it away from the folks, can put it out in an area where there's transmission available, and allow that ground to be developed near the communities for larger scale manufacturing or jobs that create, or growth that creates more jobs than what would be of a solar farm. That said, solar does provide jobs, and our company coming in and doing a project would produce quite a bit of economic development for the county. So we see that addition as a conditional use in the ag preservation area as being a good thing. And we just like to support the planning commission's support the recommendation forward and ask that the planning commission make a recommendation to the board for approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Commissioners, do we have any questions? Anyone else in the public have any comments or questions?
I'm going to kind of reiterate Leo Yoakum, 1691, 250th Street, Salix. I agree with him. Back in about 25 years ago, I'm going to kind of duplicate probably what Simcoe's going to say tonight. That's when we did our comprehensive plan for the county. And at that time, it was nice to see that they came out to the rural area and had town hall meetings. I was involved at Salix, and it was a roundtable discussion that they had, that they laid out everything and what they were about, what they were looking for, and then they asked for input. We had a good turnout there. It was great. I saw some things in the comprehensive plan that we talked about that night. I know that when they implemented that plan, there was a couple of hiccups in there that it got put off a couple of years to get some things remedied. One of the big things that really stood out, though, was how they determined everything south of the airport to be industrial and commercial. That really materialized. The one thing nobody thought about was renewable energy. And when we look at this area south of the airport, we've got a new interchange coming in. We've got rail that is there. We've got an airport that's hardly used commercially for businesses. We've got a lot of upside to that side. If commercial and industry has to compete with renewable energy, and I'm saying mostly solar, it's going to hurt. It'll take away a lot of what was in that plan 25 years ago, and they had no idea that renewable energy would be this popular. So I'm for this use. I'm for this conditional use, because if this comes to fruition, you still set up the boundaries here. It starts here, goes to the Board of Supervisors, and let everything happen, as it is. So I'm in favor of that conditional use permit.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Mr. Yoakum? No? Anyone else?
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street, Moville. I really, I don't have a problem with a conditional use in general. However, I think the topography in the hills, this will not work well at all. our lowest hills are very prone to erosion. And when you put these structures up, then there's no way to control the erosion, and then it becomes a neighbor's problem. So I guess the main thing that I would look at, I agree with Leo that there's land down south of the airport that, and south in Salix in his area that probably could very well be utilized for something like this, and I don't see a downside to it. I would like to see a stipulation in it that it couldn't go beyond an A slope on any soil type. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioner? None? Anyone else? Are we ready to go into closed session? Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in closed session. Any comments or questions that you have at this point, commissioners?
I guess I have a couple things. Under Amendment 1, on the third paragraph, I think a little bit of clarification needs to be in there on also net metering, or if they purchase and then you buy back, somehow it needs to allow that for the private use, because I know that's what's happening now, and that's a big benefit, you know, because you're producing solar sometimes at a time when you don't use it and need it. So the allowed, or the ability to allow for net metering should be clearly defined in that paragraph also. And then a little bit of to address Doyle's comment. If there's policy established or something that is in regards to not necessarily setbacks, but the conditions that the Board of Adjustment would follow. I like the conditional use permit part of it, because you can address each application differently and not just throw an ordinance out at it and say, well, this is what it is, because you might exclude somewhere that's perfect for it, or you might include somewhere that's not. So I understand where you're coming from, and that's where maybe some language to address how the policy is that the county follows regarding the conditional use permit for solar energy field for utility. The private use would just follow the accessory structure allowance that's in existence. So I guess that's all I would have on that.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
Just gonna ask Tom for clarification on the net metering. Rate wise, that's all up to whoever's buying that, correct?
Yeah, currently the way REC, and I think it's a 5-year period, they'll do net metering where basically it'll just roll the meter forward or back on how you produce energy. It gives a time frame for you to get some of that paid for, your upfront expense. They didn't used to do that. They used to just pay you, maybe a cent or 2 cents when you're buying it for 12.
That's what my memory was. But
Right.
It's changed.
They have, I think it's a 5-year period right now where they'll net meter, and that's basically you use a kilowatt, you produce a kilowatt, they'll even that out. And they limit the size of the capacity of the field you put in by your history of energy use. I'm not sure how it would work if it was a brand new house, but I'm sure they have a formula that they create. But REC, Mid-America currently have guidelines in place to limit how large a place or array you can put up. And it's based on your energy use over a history. So yeah, the net metering is a 5-year period right now that REC has, I know, in place. And it just allows for the landowner to be assured that they're going to get some of that money back that they put out for it, and it's going to benefit them to get the system in. After 5 years, I think they're back to the low rate. And then the landowner may have to use a battery bank system or something. But I guess all I was getting at is if it's production for only the use on site, then that might rule out net metering or that selling to REC and buying back. If you can only use what the solar energy is produced right there on your site, I don't know. I think that is that correct to maybe interpret that wouldn't allow for net metering
Well,
if the term isn't included?
it's got to serve that parcel for sure, so I'm just trying to think.
Because somebody could
Cover that
argue
up.
that electricity is being used somewhere else because you're basically REC acts as your battery bank for 5 years.
Yeah, so classifying it as an accessory structure to a principal use, yes, it's worded that way to keep an empty parcel from, okay, here's some solar panels here. So it's tied directly, whether to serve a business or to serve the residential, it's got to be tied to that directly. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and
as far
that
as-
I don't have an issue with the phrase or the line that says electrical energy for immediate on-site use. To me, excludes the benefit of being able to net meter. Because if it's only for immediate on-site use, you can't let REC take some of that power and use it and then let you get it back at a different time of the day. So that's the only concern that I have there. The principal use, accessory structure, that stuff is all, I understand that. I'm okay with that for the residential private use systems.
Or something like to the nature of private net metering. with the
Right.
company.
It's only of the benefit for that parcel. They're not producing energy specifically to sell, but REC does buy it if you're producing more than you need at that time. So I think there's some wording that maybe needs to be tweaked a little bit just to allow for net metering or purchase and buyback through the utility companies. But they still limit the size. You couldn't say, well, I'm going to put up a huge system and then start generating power and say, I got a house and it's private.
So it's just, yeah, what Sioux City does basically is it's got to basically meet their accessory, basically criteria, accessory to the property and setbacks and things like that. So.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Everybody understands?
And maybe if you just get rid of the word immediate, that may satisfy that because it would be primarily on-site use, but not restricted then. And if you can only go to net zero, I mean, you can't produce more than, you're not gonna make money producing more, so.
Yeah, I guess, like I said, that's just something to change that where you just basically don't have to shut your system down if you're not using the amount of power that it is capable of producing, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of producing renewable energy if you can maximize it. And I think the net metering part or something to include that through the REC or your Mid-America buyback. I don't know what they'll call it 10 years from now. That's what I'm kind of getting at. Maybe it won't be net metering because they're out of the 5-year period and they may be buying it for 2 cents and selling you power back for 12 or 15 or whatever.
Okay, that's a good point. No other questions on the private use or utility scale use?
Well, can we go back to the slope scale on the utility use? How would you define that? Tom, are you talking about just the utility scale? Or
I think that I'm not going to speak for Doyle. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the utility scale is the only one that he's really concerned with, because if you have your residential house and you're built on the hillside, you've got an accessory structure and you're going to put it on the roof. It's not really going to impact anything. I think you're concerned with putting it on a hillside of 40 acres and losing that ground down to the houses below. So I think you need to maybe address it or have some language on the utility scale, but not necessarily on the private scale. Because private scale, they're typically the field would maybe be 30 by 60 feet. It's not and that might be about the larger, it depends on your usage for electricity. If you had a lot of use, you might be able to get a bigger one, but from my understanding, that's kind of the common size of a residential system.
Okay, so are you suggesting additional language for utility scale?
right, yes. I want to talk about slope. I don't know anything about an A slope versus this? Please, could you speak to that, Dylan? What's an A slope?
So when you look at a soil map, all of your soils have typically a different letter for slope. A is like 1% to 2%. I think it's 1% to 2%. We just refer them to A, B, C, and D mostly. And then once you get to E and F, it's really ugly. But that 1% to 2% would be mostly what Leo, everything down on the Missouri River bottom is going to be. You know, my main goal is to keep it out of the lowest hills. That soil just isn't conducive for it.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, going back to what Tom had mentioned too on the utility scale, is that because it's a conditional use, each application is reviewed individually. We don't have language that says you can do it here because of the slope, but we can make it a condition for each application because of its impacts on the environment or area nearby.
Right, I think that's kind of what I guess I was getting at. With the conditional use, you have that ability to say, hey, this ground isn't suitable due to its slope or its ability to easily erode.
Okay.
So I don't know that you're right, the language, because it's not in an ordinance form, but it's
And it
in a
defeats the
conditional
purpose
use.
of the conditional use anyway, so.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yep. Any other comments? Commissioners? Okay, if we're ready, I'll entertain a motion. Wait, we're in closed session, so yeah, I'd entertain a motion. Long day, sorry.
Oh,
Do we have to correct that
yeah.
first?
Make it condition
It's gonna
on.
be part of a recommendation to go straight to the supervisors. We would probably want to have a consensus on what the language would be. Or table it to next month is definitely a possibility too. It just depends on.
Well, I guess I'd like to at least maybe get this corrected. Maybe the Joshua could write that up. I don't know that we would. I'm comfortable not discussing it again next month if he comes back with the correct language. So I guess I would recommend that we forward it to Joshua to just adjust that language there.
Yeah, if you basically put a motion to recommend with this change, with net metering in there, then we can express that to the supervisors.
I'll make the motion then that we move forward with the addition of the allowance of net metering language to address the private use, whether it's net metering or called something else, but to allow for that on the residential side for private use.
Okay, we have a motion.
I kind of amend the motion to remove the word immediate to facilitate that also.
Okay, so we have an amended motion now.
Do we have to pass the first motion and then amend it?
That doesn't look like it in our procedures.
Okay.
Okay,
I just think if we get rid of the word immediate, it's going to take care of a lot of the concerns that we have, because then essentially if you're using REC as a battery, like you said, I mean, that's going to.
I don't think you want to take that away from the person's abilities. So.
No, I agree. I mean, you don't want to waste it, so. But I think if you get rid of the word immediate, it's going to take care of a lot of that. So.
oh, yeah, we have a motion.
I will second the amended motion.
Okay,
And to change the language and maybe remove the word immediate.
okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda. Review of conditional use permit application, temporary borrow pit on parcel number 8847021000002. Dan, do you want to read that information into the record, please?
Yes, JB Howland, construction applicant and property owner Donald Hennings of the Hennings Joint Trust have filed for a conditional use permit application to establish a temporary borrow site to remove earthen materials used in phase 1 and 2 of the East Highway 20 project. This respective parcel is directly south of the parcel that was reviewed at last month's meeting. It's located on the south side of Highway 20. The property is currently used as farm ground. The proposed cut area is 8 to 10 acres. The work area is 10 acres. Total excavation for export around 100,000 to 150,000 cubic yards. The parcel is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District and not in the floodplain. The applicants have provided the necessary information for stormwater management, soil erosion, dust control, haul routes, etc. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations have been notified and been requested to comment. We haven't got any written comments. I understand the other day, I think Friday, we had a phone inquiry just simply asking about it. So based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinance, the proposal meets appropriate criteria for approval. And so staff does recommend approval. And we do have the condition in the packet about the archaeological study, which we have received. So we do recommend approval. That's all I got.
Okay, do we have anyone here in the public that can address this issue or application, not issue, sorry.
Adam Larson, 2308 Madison Road, Decorah. I'm with the contractor doing it. This is just a contingency borrow case. We had some issues with one of the previous ones, so if we need to go into it, it's there. Most likely we won't be using this one, but we'd just like to approval just in case if needed, so.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions at this point? No? Okay. We'd entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move to go into closed session.
I don't think we need to close session on this one. Dan?
No, it's just a review.
Okay, just a review.
Just be a motion for recommendation to the Board of Adjustments.
I'll motion to recommend the approval of the temporary borrow pit with the condition that the archaeological study be completed for proposed site. I guess that's already been done, you said? The archaeological study's already been
Yes,
done.
I've got that.
I recommend approval of the temporary borrow pit.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. On to the next item on the agenda, a review of conditional use permit application operation of data processing business to place a demand response load resource next to the substation in conjunction with local electric utility to support grid resiliency on parcel number 864-723-300010. I got the zeros right. Dan, you want to read that into the record, please?
Yes, Organization Wi-Fi LLC applicant and property owners, Brendan Patricia A. Revocable Trust have filed for a conditional use permit application to place a demand resource load resource next to the substation abutting the property in conjunction with local electric utility to support grid resiliency for the proposed use to operate a data processing business. The proposed site is on the parcel that was just referenced. The parcel is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District and is not located in the floodplain. The land use summary table, section 3.034 of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance does not reference data processing, computer generated data processing or specific of the specific request by the applicant. However, this can be interpreted under section 3.03.3 of the ordinance as a comparable utility use or comparable to the industrial use of research and development laboratories in the sense of data analysis. Therefore, for the purposes of this request, data processing could be interpreted as a conditional use under 3.03.3 in the AP zoning district. Hence, based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning subdivision ordinance, the proposal meets appropriate criteria for approval, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Do we have anyone in the audience that wants to speak to this conditional use permit application?
Hello, my name is John Paul Barrick. I'm from Grundy Center, Iowa. And I have something to pass out to the committee that'll outline a little bit more about data processing and demand response.
I need a motion to receive.
We need a motion to receive.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to receive the information.
Can you do a second? All in favor, say aye, please. No, we'll share. We'll share. Okay, all in favor, say aye. We've got it. Okay. Receiving information.
The information I provided you today, the first slide is about the 2003 development plan that I was looking over, and there was two comments that were made in that plan. First one is about the economy of Woodbury County being in the midst of decline in 2003, and its reliance on agricultural combined with a declining industrial base. This project would bring industrial jobs, high-tech paying jobs to the area. And there was another comment about the concerns of people moving away. And we hope to address that concern with this data processing facility as an opportunity for high-tech jobs to stay in the county. The second slide is a grid electric consumption, as you were just talking about solar and wind. The generation, as you know, from renewable energy is intermittent, and that energy is not generated 24/7. And so the utility's job is to manage the consumption and demand of energy throughout their portfolio. The highest cost hours are the hours usually in the afternoon or in the morning when the energy is more expensive because a lot of people are using it and are looking to get it. So we're proposing for this conditional use, a data processing facility. And the next slide has information on what if electrical cooperatives could upgrade infrastructure without capital expenses. To upgrade the substation, we'll be making an investment of $140,000 to upgrade the substation for this use case. There's no net cost being passed to the members of Woodbury County REC. It'll also be increasing the revenue of Woodbury County. It'll be lowering the rates, and I'll get into that as we go through the presentation. It'll use more renewable energy, and it adds high-paying tech jobs, as I mentioned. Below are some examples of demand-side management for utility and what they can do with this type of load resource control. Electrification, demand response, energy use analysis, trees are all things that we can implement to reduce the amount of energy lost on the grid and also the grid reliability. The three things to consider when a demand response program is adopted are the physics, the economics, and the human behavior. You might be familiar with the economic incentives for turning off your water heater or using that as a demand response resource. This is a larger example of that and provides more energy back to the grid. So we have a set of actionable, a set of practical, and a set of possible opportunities. So we would say water heaters are possible, they're very practical to utilize. It's hard to get them above the amount of energy, the capacity that we're looking to deploy here, which would be 4.4 megawatts of capacity. The next slide show a few charts. I'm sorry that it's in black and white, but on the left and right side of that chart from hour 1 to hour 24, you'll see that top line is a green line. That's going to be your curtailed wind of a normal grid here in Iowa. And then you have a peaker plant, which is meeting that demand when consumers are using their energy during the hot summer at that 12 or 1 o'clock. And that's currently how this utility balances their grid. If you were to add battery storage, that's going to be the next slide, and it'll have a little maybe darker indication between hours 6 and 10 and hours 15 and 19. And you'll see that the incremental improvement or the incremental amount of energy storage is minimal when it comes to adding expensive batteries, as they say here. What we're proposing is to add fast acting flexible load, which would be the light blue shade between on the next chart. And that load would allow us to curtail or turn off when the consumers of Woodbury County needed the energy. And that reduces the amount of, in this case, coal power having to be used to meet that demand for this specific utility. If you increase your renewable energy capacity, you can see that the chart begins to level out. And really what we're looking for, what any community member who's consuming electricity in order to reduce their costs is looking for, is a flat line or a matching of electricity consumption and demand. And then the last slide is about transitioning to a sustainable peaking plants and how that can help for those charts. The existing data processing facility, other ones we have in Iowa, look like that picture. They're 2 strings of containers. We're on a 4-inch slab, so we minimize the amount of environmental impact that we're making to the land in the area, and we're able to bring the land back to its original state once either the lease is over or the conditional permit has expired. Some best practices and key items: we locate near substations so that we can reduce the amount of infrastructure needed to go either under the ground or over the ground from the substation where the energy has been stepped down. This substation is called the Lakeport Substation. It was originally built for the casino, but they did not meet the additional capacity requirements or demands that they asked for when they went and built their facility. So it's open and no one is using this excess capacity here at this substation. As I mentioned, we're paying for 100% of the infrastructure costs. We'll be providing a 2-month deposit to the utility, and we'll be participating in the demand response programs that the market offers to energy users here in Iowa. We have a site layout in this chart. The substation would be to the left of that site layout. As you can see, we're able to fit the property or the data center on a 1-acre property, and we'll have 3 storage containers and 1 work trailer where technicians will be working on the servers throughout the day. The next example is a curtailment example showing reducing load in our response time. So this was an example of turning off a 10.9 megawatt facility and being able to reduce the amount of consumption by 97% within 30 minutes. So instead of Woodbury County having to go on the open market and buy power or having to turn on a natural gas or coal plant, they're able to then use us to turn off, which allows you to build higher penetration of wind and solar energy on the grid here, and helps build that grid reliability that I mentioned. This curtailment example is a 15% load reduction at this Iowa utility. And you can see on this 2021 theory versus 2022 reality slide, this was the theory before a utility implemented demand response and the reality of how demand response actually functioned once they implemented a similar program. The project will operate for 10 years. That is the amount of time that the lease is for. It has 1 5-year lease with an option to renew, and has the potential to decrease cost of service for Woodbury cooperative members while increasing patronage payments to members. Patronage is something that every cooperative member gets when the community or the cooperative earns money or has an excess in their balance and their budget. It's based on a few different calculations depending on the utility, but as a demand response resource, we'll be forfeiting our patronage credits in order to ensure that we can operate on the cost structure that makes sense for us, but then also that the community will now get more funds returned because we'll be using those kilowatt hours, but not getting patronage for them. 3 other things to mention would be the sound readings. So it's a data center. We use exhaust air cooling. The only thing that comes out of this industrial process is heat. There's no other chemicals used. There's nothing else that is being extruded from the area. It's only heat. So we take cold air from one side or even hot air like today at 80 degrees, and we exhaust on the other side. The readings from about 370 feet away is 45 decibels, and there's a little scale down there for what a decibel is and what that looks like. So 45 would be an average home noise, while 60 would be a normal conversation with background music. As you move closer to the facility, we get up to the 75 range if you're within 100 feet of the facility, and that's going to be a vacuum cleaner and average radio type of noise levels. And as you can see, when you get up to 100, that's a school dance. A boombox is 96. To give you some other examples of noise readings. This facility will be staffed by 2 local employees that will live here in the county. Our intention is to hire from local community colleges or IT departments in the area. Those starting wages will be $27 per hour, and both the employees will receive healthcare benefits and potentially company housing if they need to be relocated out here, and if we're unable to find local IT professionals. The county will also receive a 1% sales tax on all energy consumed at this facility that is not exempt underneath, and the state Iowa tax has some exemptions, but the county tax is always paid. So it'll be roughly $12,000 per year for this facility, generating sales tax for the county. And we appreciate the opportunity to speak today and bring this to the board. And there's a photo of some of the team members we have in Iowa. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? A lot of information.
Is this like a server farm then type thing, or is it?
Yeah, it's a data center. So effectively, they're modular data centers that we're going to be placing there on a 4-inch concrete pad and providing demand response resources.
What's the closest residential?
The closest residential is over 2,000 feet away, and it's the owner of the property, Patricia, and they're aware of the use case and have executed the lease in full.
Do you have any questions from the audience? Not hearing any. Next up, commissioners. Entertain a motion if you're ready.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I guess one comment
Okay.
One comment I will make too is the letter from Woodbury County REC was pretty supportive of this project. So with that being said, make the motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit to place a demand response loads resource next to the substation in conjunction with local electric utility to support grid resiliency for the purpose for the proposed use to operate a data processing business.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No, thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the informational discussion of Woodbury County Comprehensive Plan of 2040 presentation by Simcoe. And these are our Simcoe people.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, we are here today to talk a little bit about the 2040 Woodbury County Comprehensive Plan. Dan has limited us in time, so I'm blaming him that we can't talk for an hour and a half to you like we planned. I am Erin Berzina. I'm the planning director at Simcoe.
And I'm Corinne Erickson. I'm a regional planner at Simcoe.
Yeah. So I know that in your packets you received kind of this information that kind of goes over what a comprehensive plan is, and then also talks about each individual chapter's goals and objectives. So I'm going to dive in just on what a comprehensive plan is, and I don't want to insult anyone or anything like that, but sometimes it's confusing the line between a comprehensive plan and a zoning ordinance and what each one of them does. So basically what a comprehensive plan does is it outlines a vision for your future. It's kind of a decision-making guide, but it's not necessarily a list of regulations like a zoning ordinance is. It's a basis for the policy that you create. It's helping to support those decisions that you're making tonight. And then it's also flexible, adaptive. It is not meant to be set in stone. Things change, times change, and all kinds of different factors in our area. So it is not a zoning ordinance. It is not rigid. It is, this is a free-flowing thing that gets reviewed and updated as time goes along. It's not specific. You're not going to find very pointed directives in here in any comprehensive plan, and it's not the only planning tool that you use, obviously. So we worked with a steering committee through the process. Also did several different opportunities for public input. And through those two kind of, and took the previous plan, of course, you don't just ditch one plan for another one, kind of have to incorporate things that were already decided upon that haven't changed. So we took all of this input and worked with the steering committee to develop a vision statement. It is quite long. I'm not going to read it because that'll be I'll just take away from Corinne's time. But it does emphasize keeping the rural character and sense of community in the county. That land development is managed, that the county's character upholds the residents' ideals. That this is a diverse agriculturally based economy, and we want to enhance existing businesses and industry. We want to support new enterprises. We want to develop a robust workforce. We want to conserve and have good stewardship of natural resources. And then also provide quality and affordable standard of living, and kind of understand that government is meant to serve people and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, to support a prosperous and resilient future. It's a mouthful, but it encompasses everything that the county stands for the next 20 years, or is meant to. So as we developed the plan, we did a bunch of public input collection at the front end, got a lot of input on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from county residents. And then we've been in the background developing the goals and objectives that you'll kind of see as we go along. Plan timeline, we've been working on this for a little over 2 years. So it's been a slog, but we're about at the end now. So we just had our final public open house here in this room. And it was decently well attended. Some of our town halls were not as well attended, which is unfortunate, but we've had some good comments and constructive comments as we go along. So with that, in your packet, again, you do have each chapter and each goal and objectives. We cannot go through all of this tonight, but we thought it is there if you would review it, of course, if you have any comments, suggestions, anything, if you would please review it, let us know. We do have a plan website. It's actually on the Simcoe site under current projects, and also a Facebook page. We have a full copy of the draft on that. But what we did want to do tonight, since we have talked a lot about land use and different things going on with the land, that we would go through the land use and natural resources section, just really briefly. And I'm going to hand it off to Corinne to do that.
Yeah, so as you can see, it is quite text heavy, so I'm not going to just read all of this, but I will just highlight the goals, and then you can dive into more specifics under each goal. So we have to support sustainable agricultural practices, preserve environmentally sensitive lands, limit urban sprawl and maintain the rural character of the county, empower landowners to be a partner in combating invasive species, reduce contaminants and surface water runoff, safeguard groundwater by limiting sources of pollution, identify sources of air quality hazards, maintain safe distances between industrial land use and all other land uses, and then plan for the creation and use of alternative and renewable energy sources in the county. And then you'll see on the reverse side of that land use chapter section is a draft future land use map. And I think Erin is going to just highlight some of the changes that we anticipate between the two plans.
Yeah. So what you might notice if you've looked at the comprehensive plan before in the draft or in the future land use map, it doesn't look all that much different. And the way it was developed was not developed by parcel. It's not meant to be directive at each individual parcel. This is kind of a broad brush, a broad stroke of what you might see along corridors or open spaces. So you'll see a lot of that light green, that's agriculture. And we don't expect those large swaths of agriculturally based uses to change all that much. But what has changed, or what is proposed to change, I should say, is basically around the Highway 20 and I-29 corridors, around Sergeant Bluff outskirts, the South Bridge interchange, which is coming along on 214th Street? Well, I don't remember. Just south of Sergeant Bluff. So what has changed around there is you'll see just a tiny itty bitty dot of commercial, and that's meant to be like a, truck stop or other travel supportive use that would be right next to that interchange. Not much has changed on the west side of I-29 there. It's was industrial before, continues to be. And then on the east side, south of Sergeant Bluff and going into Woodbury County, there's some industrial use that would fill in there that would be buffered, with Sergeant Bluff, with their urban center or city center. And then also Salix and Sloan, a little bit more commercial area added around those interchanges as we've seen more volume occur on I-29. And also just along the south side into Sloan, into the Sloan area in particular. That was something that is very much new in the area. And then on Highway 20, we're Dan, I'm just taking you all over. Okay, and then on Highway 20, we did have some commercial in the prior use land use map between the Sioux City limits and Lawton limits. That has just been expanded upon. And definitely well aware of the topography in that area, but where it would be feasible is where you might see some different commercial appear, especially now that there are better infrastructure connections across Highway 75 by Highway 20 there with the new DOT/Simcoe development. So some hookups, some connections are there now that were not before that may create some more development opportunities on the north side of Highway 20. As far as, did you want to go over this or no? I'll just mention, with the draft land use map, one thing that was not included with the last comprehensive plan is there were no land use designation descriptions. So you have the zoning ordinance descriptions for each zoning category, but there were never any explanations in the comprehensive plan for future land use. So you will have, and I am not aware if this is in the packet or not.
I believe
it is. Awesome. Okay. So you do have a separate sheet for land use designations, and we have come up with some definitions that describe each one of these land uses that are on the future land use. So if you want to take a look at those, I can read through them if you'd like me to. I know, I don't want to talk at you. We'll have to do a creative presentation for the real deal. So we have come up with those. That is new. Did the best we could to be fully descriptive of what could be in those areas. And that is all I have for that.
Yeah. So I know we mentioned before kind of that we did get a lot of public input in the development of this plan. So I just wanted to walk through what that looked like. So back in, I believe it was the summer of 2021, we did do a public survey at the very start of the planning process, and we received about 460 responses. And that really did a lot to inform, the goals and objectives in the drafting of the plan. And so as we went along last fall, we also hosted the 4 open houses out spread throughout the county. So they were held in Hornick, Moville, Sergeant Bluff, and Anthon to try to, get a cross section of the community. And then we held a final open house to present the full draft of the plan here last month at the courthouse. So the format of these, it was very informal. We had goals and objectives for each topic area presented on posters. And then staff was there to answer questions. And then there's also been an online component. So online comments have been encouraged, and all the documents we present in person are also available there as well. We advertised in local newspapers, Facebook. We have a project website, and then we sent flyers and kind of enlisted the help of city clerks to share input opportunities as well. So now we're in the midst of the comment period for the draft plan. So that will be open until June 16th. And then we've sent the document to a wide range of stakeholders. That includes the cities in the county, natural resource agencies, economic development, transportation, and then health and social service agencies as well. So just some themes that we kind of saw over and over again that informed the vision statement throughout the process. A lot of concerns about urban and suburban sprawl coming from Sioux City. There's a desire to maintain the rural character of the county, more opportunities for outdoor recreation, protection of open spaces and natural resources, and improvement of conservation areas. And then overall, residents seem to really value the rural character, clean air and water, and access to open space and public lands. So those are kind of the land use themes that came through there. So yeah, and we would take any questions or comments that you have. There's also, again, you can kind of process it. It's a lot of information that we gave you in this packet, so you can always come back and submit those electronically as well.
Yeah, I mean, how many responses did you get on the survey, and what kind of numbers did you have actually attend the open meetings? I mean, just think about how much input you actually had from the members of the community, from the region.
Yeah, we had just about 460 responses on the initial survey. The open houses, the most recent open houses have not been as highly attended, but we still have had some input online as well. So I would say maybe a dozen or so back in the fall comments. Yeah, and then I think we had maybe 15 to 20 people, or I don't know, Dan, do you think that's a good estimate for the one last month? Maybe about 15 people showed up.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's easier on the front end when you're asking specifically what they feel. But then at the back end, when you're presenting the actual information that you've gathered, it's a different animal. It's a lot to take in a comprehensive plan, and unfortunately, it is text heavy. That's just the nature of the beast. So what I will say though is, if any of you have any organizations or anyone in the public or would like to talk about anything, we can do that. We can do more targeted public input as well as we wrap this up.
I guess just to follow up a little bit on that, I know from not the current plan that we have, but the plan that was adopted prior to that got thrown out. It was the same situation. It's hard to get people to show up at meetings that affect them unless it's, directly impacting them and they're aware of it. So I understand your problem getting people to show up. And the other issue that we had then was the future land use map and the large rezoning were virtually identical. And that created a lot of issues. So as long as this is just your future land use map and it's fluid. It's not changing anything for
Right.
anybody. It's just showing where the growth may go and what your interpretation is. I think you're safer there. But I do understand that you know, unless it's really hitting somebody home and they know about it, they're not going to show up at the meeting. So that's, I guess, my comment.
Yeah, this is not a rezoning. This is not zoning. I could have a banner. This is not zoning. But it just is the base layer, kind of the underlying characteristic, land characteristic that kind of sits underneath the zoning.
Any other questions or comments? Anything from the public? I'm not hearing anything. Thank you, ladies, for your
We'll
time.
be
I
back.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. Next item on the agenda. Meeting time and location for the Woodbury County Zoning Commission is referenced in the rules of procedure. Dan?
Okay, I was approached a few weeks ago by a rep from the sheriff's department, kind of concerned about the time frame that we meet. And I was kind of asked to bring up to the commission and of course the Board of Adjustment in the future about the actual time and the day basically that we meet. And what I'm doing is asking to review the scenario, I guess, with the way the security is with the county between the 4:30 and the 6 o'clock. I'm not so sure how it works in terms of the sheriff's department on how they're paid, but we kind of are looking at the specific time frame. I know what happens is the zoning commission themselves, by the rules of procedure, you vote and you decide on your time and day. It's in the rules of procedure under your authority, but we're also all under the authority of the Board of Supervisors as well, as when the building is operating, as well as the time frame and the security and everything. And so we're kind of comprehensively looking at the whole scenario. And one of the ideas was generally how you all would feel about different types of meeting times, maybe earlier versus the 6 o'clock. One idea was either like 4 o'clock or 4:30. And the kind of the scenario here is the supervisors can look at it. They control, of course, the office hours for when the building is open, and they're basically trying to evaluate kind of what is the best times across the board financially when we look at budgets. And so this is definitely not an action item or anything, but it's something to bring to your attention and kind of poll what you all think would be appropriate. I understand through the years of your service on these commissions and boards of adjustment, they may have met at different times. Wasn't it several, probably a lot of years ago now, when it got moved to 6 o'clock p.m. And so there's lots of rationale to have it at 6. There's a lot of rationale that the supervisors meet at 4:30. I understand the supervisors themselves even used to meet in the morning years ago. And so it was moved later on to 4:30. So logistically, we're interested in, if you'd be interested in moving the time up earlier versus the 6 o'clock start time. And one area that I heard was even as early as 4. How would you feel about something like that? I'll leave it to you all.
I'll give you some history.
Okay.
I think at one point in time we talked about this, and the reason we talked about it is the majority of the applicants probably work at a different job. And so to make it convenient for them, we would be at 5 or 5:30 or later. So I think that's what the purpose was at that time. And a lot of us work fluid jobs that we're working late and trying to get a lot of stuff done during certain periods of the seasons, to speak. So probably any time isn't a good time. But be that as it may, I know I've always promoted either a 4 or 4:30 just because it seemed like it was more convenient. People could get home to their suppers or, you know, to their kids' events, whatever it happened to be. But I'm flexible as far as when we hold this. Anybody else have comments?
I mean, I know I can't do 4 or 4:30. 5 o'clock would probably work, but I mean, it'd be hard to get here at 4 o'clock routinely, so. But I'm replaceable.
I guess the only comment I'd follow up on is, and I think the reason the supervisors moved from morning to afternoon was maybe to make it a little easier for somebody to show up at the meetings. And I know years ago, that was kind of the thing that, well, I can't get there by then. I mean, I'm not saying I'm against anything. I'm just saying that's something that's in my mind that you wouldn't want people to feel that they were targeted and say, well, we want to exclude the public from these meetings. I understand the reason why they want to. I absolutely can understand moving it up for that purpose, so.
Anyone else? Comments, questions?
I'm pretty flexible. I can go either way. But yeah, 5 o'clock, I'd probably rather go at 5 o'clock. So people get off work and be able to show up to the meetings too.
4:35. Good.
It'd be good at 4:30.
You want it at 4:35?
4:30. I'll take 4:35.
4:35.
4:30.
And I guess that's something I would think we wouldn't be stepping on too many toes to go to 5, because you're still sneak out a little early and maybe they can get here.
Right.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is one of those things that it takes a lot of collaboration and working together to decide on a time and a location where these events do meet, including there's always the ability to adjust the location or look at different circumstances. With the way the courthouse is designed, I know it's typically the 8 o'clock to 4:30 is how it's designed for the use of the courthouse. But the unique part about being a board with significant responsibility under Iowa code, you create your own rules, but you might recall when you passed your rules of procedure before, the supervisors are a big component of that you approve them, then the supervisors also approve those. So it does definitely take a partnership and an understanding when trying to adjust these. And so they ultimately have control over the building, but you have control over the time. So it takes quite a bit of back and forth. So if there was kind of a general consensus, I guess from what I'm understanding, we're kind of saying 5 and 4:30 right now. Is that somewhere in that distance? Okay, because I've heard as early as 4, so I'm just putting that out there. But again, this being an information item, we can't really, the board can't take action on it, but it's just informational at this point. So
I guess the comment I'd make here is that would exclude you. 5. I wouldn't want to go far enough that we're going to remove a board member for that purpose, and then also maybe exclude some of the public. 5 would be, if that helps enough, maybe it isn't enough, maybe they want more.
okay, and to be clear, this being in the informational stage, if this were to be brought up, we would likely get some sort of direction that comes from the supervisors for consideration. So if we were to get consideration, then we would bring it over as an action item, and then you would have the ability to review your rules of procedure and feel coming up with something through that process, then ultimately reporting back to the supervisor. So that's ultimately kind of the science of what could happen. So I'll keep you posted on what's coming up. If we receive any further information, I'll have to, the Board of Adjustment would look at this situation very similar, as there's a lot of similarities, of course, with both in respect to zoning. So that's all I've got there. So.
I was gonna, just one comment. Not a fan of Zoom meetings, not a fan of teaching over Zoom, but that is a cost cutting thing. There's no mileage paid. Anyone could zoom in. We did those over COVID. We just did it on the phone. You didn't even get to see people. And that was all okay. I mean, not a fan of it, but that's one way to trim costs as well. I don't think anyone wants that, but
I think when these were adopted over, I think it was last year, February of last year, one of the areas was to add that section 9 with the electronic participation. If there was a reason, you've still got to have a quorum here in person of the 3, but if there's a reason that somebody cannot make it under a particular reason, there is that ability for a member to call in based on what section 9 was added. And a lot of these were really reflective of what the supervisors have as well, in terms of they have the ability to call in at times when it's impractical for them to be here, or scenarios that keep them from being. Yeah, you have to have a physical quorum here in person. Yeah.
I think when you're talking about how we were able to do it, that was because of the COVID mandate that allowed for it. And
Yep.
that's gone now. So we're back to the 3. Yeah, that 3 here.
Yeah.
Any other comments on that item? Questions, anything? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Do we have anything out there? Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I noticed on the agenda this evening, the gentlemen were talking about a rapid response system related to the utility industry. One thing at NextEra is we also have battery, excuse me, battery energy storage systems, which are usually built in combination with solar or with a wind project. And those energy systems, they take up numerous acres, generally located adjacent to or next to substations or interconnections. And I know the current zoning code does not address those. I'm just making a suggestion that maybe that definition would also be added to the zoning code, as well as just something to look at in the future. Being new to the area, operating in Iowa, it's great to see that the commission has moved forward with their comprehensive plan. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I certainly hope that renewables are addressed in the plan somewhere. It's something that I think is really coming full circle in the state, and would encourage the commission to look at that and make that a part of the conversation as it relates to the comp plan. So just like to thank you.
Okay, the next item we have on the agenda then is item number 7, commissioner comment or inquiries. Do you have anything, commissioners? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to staff update, which is item number 8. Staff, do we have update?
One thing, tomorrow night, the 23rd, is the 3rd reading of the wind ordinance amendment that the supervisors have been considering. Right now, the proposal, last week, they made a adjustment to increase the setback for the public conservation areas to 1 mile. Before, in the first phase, they were looking at kind of a half mile and 4 times the tower height, but after last week, they looked at the public conservation areas and said 1 mile, and then 2 miles, of course, from the city. So that's tomorrow night at 4:45 p.m. in this room. So it is the 3rd reading. So that's all I've got for staff.
Okay, nobody has any questions or comments on that. We're going to move on to item number 9, which is adjournment. And I will adjourn this meeting tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Appreciate your participation.
motion to adjourn.
Thanks. Second, do we want to go through the motion? Go ahead. Second, anybody? Okay, all in favor, say aye. You don't like it if I just call it quits, huh?